What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Hire to Scale podcast. I am your host, JP Forno, and today we have our first guest appearance of the show, and I couldn't be happier for it to be my good friend, Peter Swenson. To tell you a little bit more about Peter, he brings over 20 years of experience in direct sales across industries like educational products, home automation, and solar, during which he's hired and trained over 4,000 sales professionals and helped drive hundreds of millions of dollars in company revenue. Today, as the CEO and co-founder of the Hire Advantage, he's focused entirely on helping other organizations build and scale high-performing direct sales teams. With proven systems for recruiting, onboarding, and integration, they deliver better hire quality, faster ramp-ups, and sustainable performance. I've had the pleasure of calling Peter a friend. He actually gave me my first job when I was still in college as a door-to-door salesperson, selling home automation services in the streets of Minnesota. And even though that was, over 10 years ago, the lessons that I learned at that job is lessons that I still use today to scale my team and also to run my company. So I can attest that the systems that Peter has been able to develop and perfect around recruiting, around training, around management, they really work for creating high performance professionals in your organization, but also for the professionals to develop these sort of skills that they can take and rely on as they continue to develop their career. So I hope you learn a lot from this episode. Today, we're going to talk about building high-performing teams without sacrificing culture, how to design recruiting systems that actually filter for the right people, how to turn onboarding into a mechanism to develop trust and buy-in from your employees, how to identify signals that somebody's coachable during the recruiting process, and also how to establish daily training and feedback activities to make sure that you develop a culture of growth and performance. So we're going to learn a lot from Peter today. I am excited to have a conversation with him, and hopefully you get to learn just a little bit of what I've learned from Peter throughout the year. So hope you enjoy the episode. Peter,
Beautiful.
I am
Yeah.
so excited to have you here. I think I mentioned it a little bit in the intro, but we go way back, over 10 years now. I
Yeah.
remember you were the person who gave me my first job. It was Valentine's Day, 2015. So I'm excited to get to do this sort of like a full circle conversation. So
hmm
thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's start by maybe setting the stage a little bit for everybody who's listening. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are, what's your background, and what you're working on right now?
Yeah. So you and I met roughly 10 years ago, Valentine's Day, which is heartwarming that you remember the day. It's good. That's how I know
Yeah.
it was a meaningful relationship, right?
Yeah,
Uh, but
I remember that.
I've been in the door-to-door space for over 2 decades. So when JP and I met, it was door-to-door home security. I was managing large teams, 100 to 200 people that would go across the nation and knock on doors and sell products on the doorstep or at the kitchen table. And so I got into that industry when I was 19, selling books door to door. If anybody's watching this that has never done direct sales or knocked on doors, it is as crazy and as intense as it sounds. It's not for everybody, but for those who can stomach it, it's a massive opportunity just for personal and professional development, which is really the part of the industry that I got attached to, leading and challenging and coaching others through that process. And for those that don't quit, seeing the massive benefit and impact to their life, to their self-image, typically to their career path and their leadership journey. And I've been involved in that space for 20 years. We recently pivoted into a focused consulting and recruiting business. So now instead of building our own teams and our own company, which we did that for a long time, built a very large solar company as well, we're now focused on bringing the best practices and the best solutions for recruiting and training and engaging talent that's young in their sales career, and bringing them into the direct sales space. And we do that for dozens and dozens of partners across the nation. We're hiring, hundreds of sales reps on a monthly basis right now with and for our partners. And most of these sales reps are going into a full commission position.
Yeah, I remember like it feeling like what I would imagine boot camp feels like for the army, but just like in the sales context, you learn so much in such a little amount of time, you get to talk to people in different socioeconomic backgrounds,
Mhm.
with different motivations, and you're selling the same product to a different set of audiences. And so I thought it was a really cool thing. Probably some of the lessons that I still hold on to as an entrepreneur this day. Um, but I remember that a big part of it, it seemed like, was on getting the right people on the bus, and recruiting had always been a part of, your trajectory building these sales teams. So I guess just to get us off and started, like, you built thousands of or hundreds of sales teams throughout your career. What do you think are some of the mistakes people make when it comes to recruiting?
So I think just to make sure we're accurate, I think I've built dozens of sales teams, but I've recruited thousands of people.
There you go.
So something that applies universally and definitely applies in sales and direct sales is like to really understand, to know the avatar or the archetype of person that you're looking for, as well as what the role or the position really requires. Meaning you can easily overinvest time into a person without the certainty required that they're going to be there for a long period of time, right? Like if you're hiring somebody, for example, a salaried position in an HR role or an ops role, it's not inappropriate to take your time in interviewing them and really make sure you got the right person, build the relationship, build trust. Like you're probably not going to overinvest time into that type of role. But when it comes to the world I've largely been a part of, which is full commission sales with some version of high turnover, you can't overinvest your time into the wrong people consistently without experiencing a lot of burnout. And so one of the mistakes I've seen is people that rely too much on themselves and not enough on systems, too much on their personality, too much on relationship and not enough on systems. And they have the experience of being burnt out because in the world of commission sales, there's people that are a good fit. There's people that aren't a good fit. Oftentimes you can't really tell the difference between those two. All things being equal, some people do well and some don't. And sometimes the ones that do well surprise you. And sometimes the ones that fail surprise you. Oftentimes they do. So I think my point with that, specifically in the world of direct sales and full commission recruiting, is understand the nature of the business. Understand the nature is going to be high volume. You need to train and invest into people so that they can succeed, but you can't see the future. So make sure you don't overinvest into the wrong people. Likewise, if you're hiring somebody internally, don't underinvest into somebody who is a salaried position who you are relying on for like crucial aspects of the operational part of your business that maybe don't bring you volume. Like a sales rep's going to bring you, net new volume, especially if they're direct sales or, full commission. Go find your prospect or service sales, insurance, and a lot of direct sales worlds are like that. But if you're building something or bringing somebody into part of your business that isn't that way, then you can't just hire them and see how it goes. So it's like those two things I've seen done wrong so many times. I've done them wrong so many times.
Yeah, and I like what you said about you can't rely on your own personality or on your I often, when I started getting into recruiting, I saw how much personal bias came in the way of making decisions on who to bring on board, like a
Mhm.
confirmation bias or an affinity bias. And in sales, like, you tend to like gravitate towards people who are like you, but you said that it's much more important to develop systems for getting people on board. So let's say someone was about to start their own sales organization. What are some of the systems that they should be putting in place as they're thinking about building this team?
Are they're built constructing for the first time a sales team inside of their company, something like that?
Yeah, so let's say, for example, what I see oftentimes is that the entrepreneur is the person who's leading sales,
Mhm.
right? And they're now starting, maybe it's, if it's not, even if it's not just like fully on commission, maybe if it's like salary plus commission or whatever configuration of compensation it is, but they're now starting to delegate that portion of the business for the first time to somebody else. It can be like
Mhm.
one person, it can be like a team of 3 or 5. But in order for that person to not make the mistake of going with bias hiring, what
Mhm.
system should be put in place for them to be successful at this?
Yeah. So the answer to this question is going to be dramatically different if we are talking about like replacing the founder in handling inbound warm leads or paid leads versus stepping in and replacing the founder and it's all outbound, all hunter, rather than gathering. So the answer is, do you want me to focus on either one of those, or just the one that I've
Yeah.
spent more time in? Yeah.
Well,
So
the one that you probably feel more,
yeah, one,
comfortable in, or
I've
either
now
one?
had, yeah, I've had a lot of experience in both now, but I've had a lot more experience in in our solar company, for example. When we began building, I was selling. We ended up doing over 130 million in sales in that business in 3.5 years. So it was a wildly successful run. And in the beginning, I was in the field. I was knocking on doors. I was talking to people, but we realized in order to mature the business and scale it, I needed to be able to focus on building the systems. And so it was finding people to replace what I was bringing in with what they were bringing in. The distinction being, we weren't spending money on leads that they were messing up. It was just their time, right? They were spending their time. And because of that, we, had an aggressive commission structure. So for us, it was two things, right? Number one, and I don't want to overstep this, is volume. It's a volume game when you're talking about outbound sales, especially door to door, something where you have functionally a limitless supply of leads. And so we very, very quickly brought in as many of the right people as we could find. And then in order to make sure that they were successful when we got in, we had to have our sales scripts down. We had to have our daily and weekly meetings down. We needed to make sure, because really when you bring somebody into direct sales, their interview gets extended into the time that they're in the field. So if you've got an outbound sales rep, their interview, they may have the job. They may have gotten the job 1099 W-2, but their interview's not done until they're in the field producing, because until that's true, they're not permanent in their mind to you. And for you to them, it's the same thing. And so we had volume of people, we had sales talks, we had meetings, trainings, and in the interview, we were not shy about explaining exactly what the job was and what it wasn't. Right? I've definitely seen people make this mistake again and again where they sugarcoat the nature of the business. Right? In door to door, I could say that it's in a team environment and there's a lot of great culture, and you're in homes and you're closing $30,000 jobs. And I can talk about all the great things, but if I don't get clear that you're going to be knocking on doors 80% of the time, 98% of the time that you're knocking on doors, you're talking to people that don't want you to be there. And the other 2%, they also don't want you to be there, but you're good enough to turn them around. Like, if you can't accept and embrace that part of the job and you find out about it once you hit the field, you're not going to last very long either. So proper preparation and proper expectations for the people that are coming in. And again, all of this is very specific to the direct sales, endless prospect area. But I can tell you from, inbound sales reps, which, in our current business we have, it was proper preparations and proper expectations were also important. And we were hiring one person for that role, not endless. And so different approach. We were much more thorough on the qualification process and, talking to multiple people in the company. Whereas over here, where it's high volume, we know what we're looking for. And if through our structured systems of funneling them, qualifying them, and approving them to join the team, if they qualify in that method and then get offered a job, we're going to give them a shot.
Mm-hmm. So let me see, just to replay this back to you, and let me know, because I obviously can speak from experience because I went through that funnel when I was in college, right? So, for example, because there is an unlimited amount of leads, and the downside for the business for a hire not working is really just time and effort when it comes to training and managing that. So you can hire as many people as that qualify in that bucket, right?
As many people that qualify without hurting your culture in the process, right? So if you bring in the wrong people, it'd be better to bring in 5 of the right people than 10 people with 5 of them being the wrong people, because whether or not they can succeed at the job is one question. Whether or not they bring the collective group's attitude, expectation, and experience up or bring it down, that's the downside of hiring the wrong people. It's not the volume, it's the quality.
Got it. And then so when we figure out, and I'm imagining, I remember we used to do shoulder tapping, right? Like going on campuses, running ads, just like as you would in sales, because you're going for volume, I'm imagining you go through separate channels to do candidate acquisition, so to speak, and kind of like them leading top of funnel, they come in through a series of interviews or demos of the company. And then I really like what you said, where the hiring doesn't end when they sign the contract. There is a period of what we used to call in the call center as like nesting almost, right? Like where
Mhm.
they're still in the nest, but they're alive, I guess, out of the shell. And then after they get through that, then they're like confirmed for like the summer or whatever period of time it is. Did I get that right, or am I off base
Yeah.
in one of the
Yeah.
steps here?
Yeah. No, I would call it, there's the decision making where they say yes to the job. And then there is the onboarding where they, kind of quickly, the opportunity becomes real and they get put in the system. And then there's a
Mhm.
process that we call integration. And that would
Integration.
be, you could really argue that is from, the moment they're onboarded all the way through the first few weeks when they are nesting, as you said, right? Like integration, I would say, is getting them bought in and getting them to the starting line. Nesting is maybe that phase after they start, but they're not ready to go fly on their own. But functionally, yeah, they're not really recruited until they decide to stay there after they've experienced what there
Mm.
is, after they've felt the culture, after they've spent time with the team, after they've experienced the coaching, after they've knocked the doors, or metaphorically, whatever that is. It's at that point, once they're fully aware of what they're saying yes to, that the yes matters the most. And you'll get some people
Got
that
it.
are just like bullheaded and they said yes and they're not going to quit. But like, I don't even know that those are the best people sometimes, like, because they're not telling themselves the truth about what they want, what they need. So,
Yeah.
and really, if the only reason somebody stays is because they said they would, I mean, there's an easy argument that that's a good thing. But if they're truly a bad fit and are going to end up bringing the culture down, you don't want them sticking around just because they're stubborn.
Yeah. And I think that when we contrast that to something that has a little bit more of a financial constraint, right? Like if you're doing like an internal hire where you do have like a
Yeah.
set budget for this role, I can't hire 10 and keep the top two, right? Like I need to be a lot more sure about this role before we both say yes. How do you still recreate that integration period where they're still saying yes post starting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And do you integrate that, or do you recreate that same sort of like condition or context for those types of roles as well?
Yeah. So I would say the most useful way that we've done this is to be clear with the people that we're bringing on that we're dating before we get married, and that
Mm.
we're, here, the role that we're looking to fill has all of these, outcomes or deliverables as, the primary focus or outcome. And we are looking for somebody who can deliver all that. We're going to both learn about each other and about this role along the way. And we can pretend that we're saying yes to each other for the next 5 years, but it's probably fair for both of us to recognize we're not, right? We're saying yes for the first 30 days. And if that goes well and it's feeling good, will continue to be a yes. And probably 60 to 90 days in is when you know that this is a good fit and you can be together and grow together for a while. And so that conversation, not being afraid of that conversation and looking for people who are not afraid of that conversation on the other side, because they've got to be comfortable and confident that they can bring the value. They're going to have to be comfortable and confident that they can, again, on the operations side, show up and be a strong enough asset to the team and a good enough member of the team that it would be silly for anybody to think that you should go shopping and looking for somebody else. But at the same time, if they come in and, I think the risk for some of those roles is like, I feel like I got it. Like I got the job. I got the salary. Oh, I just got, 6 figures for the first time. Well, that's great. Can you keep it?
Good.
Are you the right person? Takes a little bit more time than do we think you're the right person does.
Right. I really like that because it also relieves a little bit of the pressure into not trying to make, I guess, a perfect decision. Like there's still a period of that 30, 60, 90 days where we're still exploring. But
Mhm.
but that also forces you as a business owner to try to make the best decision so that you don't have to like
Yeah.
go back to square one
Yeah. There's
after
a high
those 90 days.
opportunity cost to have to retract all of that and do it all again. But it is, but like really both sides are making sure that, hey, this is the fit that we want.
Yeah. And so
And
one of
when
the
and
things
when
that,
one more thing, JP, is
yeah,
when possible. Like we've got some VAs that we've hired, in our VA team. We have a lot of VAs actually. I think we're almost up to 20 in our company. But some of the VA positions we've overhired for them on purpose, knowing that we're going to be wrong about some of the people, or some of the people will be wrong about their willingness or their ability to do the position well. And so that's something else that we've just built in, especially maybe in the VA world. If you're an American company, you've probably got enough margin to hire a couple people and look for the right one. Again, be open with them about it. I wouldn't suggest you pretend that you've just locked somebody in forever and then surprise them, 2 months later by saying, I actually hired, your replacement at the same time as you. But that's been helpful because it's also alleviated pressure on their end to try to force something that isn't a good fit.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned it twice already. And I do remember this part whenever we were, getting proposed the idea of going door to door. And it was a cool experience. I'd never been through a process like that where I sat in a room with like 20 other people and we were listening to like all the good things about like this opportunity and how much we would learn and all the upsides of joining a door-to-door organization. But I remember that you were almost like towards the end is like, here are all the parts that suck about this job. I want to scare you out of making this decision. Was that something that was intentional or something that like, you continue doing? I just thought that was really clever because the people who are left standing were the people who already knew, what they're signing up for.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely intentional. And the reality is you're not going to hide those negative parts forever. And I heard this many years ago, people don't mind bad news, but they hate surprises. And so if there's a chance for the right person, you actually develop and build trust with them by being upfront about the challenges. But it also allows you to find out who's thinking about this the right way, who's asking the right questions, who's willing to consider the discomfort because the upsides are exciting enough for them. Because, upsides in general for everybody are going to be exciting. They have to be contrasted with the challenge in order to understand how valuable it is to somebody. If you said, hey, do you want to have fun? I'd say, sure, I probably want to have fun. You want to have $1? Sure, I want to have $1 more than I want to not have $1. But what does it cost me? And so we find out the value of money or the value of growth or the value of the upsides by their contrast to the challenges. And that is something that we've brought into our internal hiring now on the non-sales, non-full commission roles, which is to be really clear about, look, here's all the reasons this probably isn't a good fit for you. Or this might not be a good fit for you. Because if they can't defend them and tell you why it's going to be okay, then they're going to experience it either way. You're going to both find out in real time later on how they feel about them. I'd rather force that on the front end. And if it means that a good fit becomes not a good fit, then the reality is he probably wasn't a good fit. And I mean, I had a close friend very recently who I did this the wrong way with. So I allowed myself to talk about the fun and the excitement of working together. And if we brought him on, it would be this, that, and the other. And I didn't really engage in the harder stuff about the job or frankly, what the business needed from him that was not going to be so fun. And as we got down to like, one of my closest friends in kind of a stupid position to put myself in. It's like when we finally got down to the nitty gritties, I'm like, oh, I got to mention this stuff. And when I did, it's like, why didn't we talk about that 4 hours ago, 5 hours ago, like weeks ago, but 4 hours previous in the conversation? Because I would have been honoring him by presenting that sooner because it wasn't a good fit. Right. And so it's like, at some point they figure it out. You might as well come to them on the front end and see how they respond.
And build that rapport of trust and it was like, I'm always going to level with you type of approach. And that's kind of like what it felt like from the get-go. Yeah. One of the things I want to talk about, because I remember when I first got introduced to the opportunity of joining a direct sales organization, it was at a place where I had this massive overflow of different opportunities that I can go to. Like I was at a career fair at Arizona State and there was IBM, there's Intel, there's HP, there's all these Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 companies. And so I think that's the dilemma that most small or growing businesses encounter, that they want to attract A players, but at the same time, they're competing against these massive recruiting budgets and compensation packages and all that stuff. So how in a sea of opportunities can you differentiate your organization to still attract those A players to want to come and join in?
It's a good question. You've got to know what your A players are looking for. You need to know, what defines an A player to you, right? If it's simply a matter of skill, for me, it's more than skill. It's culture fit, right? It is skill. It's culture fit. It's alignment and vision. And part of our culture has always been and will always be, regardless if we're building the sales teams and teaching them ourselves or supporting the sales teams and helping other companies to build them like we do now. But growth is an essential component to what I believe business is about. I think business and the relationship you have with the company you work with, that it ought to be a catalyst for your own growth and development. That, unless you're just the AI developer who's getting paid $1 billion a year to work for OpenAI. But even then, right? Like we see these AI developers just recently being offered what seems to us, all of us, probably astronomical amounts, hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. In fact, in some cases, probably more than what they're getting paid from their other company. And they're saying no, right? They're not even entertaining it. Why? It's not just about the dollars. It's about the culture. It's about the mission that they get to be a part of, the team they get to be on. And probably for many of them, the growth that comes alongside of it. I know for you and for a lot of people that get into door-to-door, and for me 22 years ago, I didn't get into door-to-door direct sales because of the money specifically. That helped me to justify the pain I knew I was going to feel. Like I wanted that to be there so that I could, bring home the bacon if I was going to go through that experience. But why did I keep coming back? I mean, the money was always good, but it was the growth in me, right? It was my recognition of my maturing as a leader, my maturing as a business person, my maturing as a salesperson. And I felt like that was more valuable than any dollar I ever earned knocking on a door. And I think if you can identify what your business in door-to-door is very unique, because it's very clear, if you've ever done it, that, you will mature rapidly as a man and as a salesperson and as a leader if you knock on doors. That isn't necessarily the magical bullet for every business. But if you know what you provide, if it's the culture, if it's the growth and the development, if it's the launching pad for the next thing, if it's the mentorship provided by you or somebody else on your team, if it's the family feel, if it's the events, like understand what your silver bullets are and make sure that you're sharing those. Because for the right person, which is who you're looking for, they don't just bring the skill, they bring alignment to those things. And
Yeah. And oh no,
yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
no, you're good. No, that's
No,
good.
I thought it was interesting because it wasn't, I don't believe I ever saw a job description, like a
You probably
traditional
didn't for us.
document.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was more of like a presentation. And I felt
Yeah.
like, it almost feels like a sales call today when somebody
Mhm.
else is like, and I think that's sort of like what you have to do with top talent or any talent that's into your university. You do have to start by selling them on the idea.
You're,
Uh,
I think you're connecting people to the vision they have of themselves in the future. And, there are the boring details of the job. And if you're looking for just the boring executor, that's different than what we're talking about. If you're looking for somebody who's going to innovate and drive performance and help the whatever division or department that they're in or the position they are in to become better and more efficient and to optimize it over time and to innovate it over time, which you build a culture of people like that, and you're going to beat the guy who's just got the boring executors.
Good.
That is, yeah, it's a part of it from the beginning, but those people, and a lot of people, I wouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people, they do yearn to be more. Like, I think there's, it's a natural human experience to desire to grow. And so if you can help people tap into that and speak to that and speak to, hey, the future version of you is calling. You can talk to coders with that language. You can talk to salespeople with that language. You can talk with managers with that language. But yeah, you're right, JP. It is, um, it is a sale in a way, because you're selling them on a future version of themselves and future opportunity set in their life that maybe doesn't exist today.
Yeah, I think that what's in it for me is something that a lot of people miss. I read a bunch of job descriptions and it's like, why would someone join you and not this other person? Like, there's nothing here of what I'm getting growth or contribution wise for my career. So I think that that's really important. Another thing that I wanted to, I guess, touch on it, and you and I've had these conversations before, and there are certain skills that are universal almost in any role that you are going to get hired for. And one of those is coachability, right? You have to
Mhm.
be able to change direction based on feedback that you're getting from people who have a different point of view, that want to see you succeed. But it is a hard thing to assess during a recruiting process, who has it and who doesn't. What have you guys done, over the, in your trajectory or in your career, to identify coachability during the recruiting process?
It's super important for sales reps, especially, to be coachable and teachable. If you get a really, really bullheaded person in and they're unwilling to learn, especially in a job as challenging as door-to-door and direct sales, learn the process that you have tested over years or decades and that works, it's not going to work for them. Like, their version is not likely going to work for them. So it's been imperative for us to figure this out. And to some extent, if we consider the interview being longer than for direct sales, full commission, endless sea of prospects world, the interview is well beyond the moment they take the job. And so you're evaluating coachability well through the first week and into the first month when they're there with you. But early on, the more signals you can get, the better. And so in our hiring process, we'll do this with our VAs as well, because coachability in VAs, very important, right? And we've worked with some VAs that are like pretty stubborn about what they want to do and how they want to do it. And like, that doesn't work as well. Not even saying that we're right and they're wrong, but we have to at least start from the same place to be able to learn together. Mm-hmm. And so we'll have them watch a video, typically as a requirement for any application. So before anybody talks to anybody on our team or any of our partners talk to any applicant, they're required to watch a video and they're required to shoot a video. And the video is a chance for us to test, hey, are they coachable enough to watch the video? And are they paying attention to the video? It's not long, 2 or 3 minutes, but it's explaining the culture, the vision, the position in broad sweeping terms, better than a job description is going to do on Indeed or whatever platform you're using. And the second is to invite a response. Again, we're measuring, are they coachable? Are they teachable? Are they willing to put themselves out there? Are they willing to, can we see how they communicate? Not just what they have to say, but how they have to say it. Right? Disagreeable people sometimes say it's not what they say that's the problem, it's how they say it. And so the more we can test, the more we can ask them to make small investments in the relationship. And that also, I think, appropriately positions the conversation. We're willing to put ourselves out there with a video. Are you going to reciprocate? And we're not begging for people to apply here. We're looking for the right fit. If you're not the right fit, we're going to let you know and not invest another 30 minutes into a follow-up interview. Because you could tell a lot listening to somebody for 2 minutes, right?
Yeah. You can tell if they're doing it as a homework or
exactly.
Something that they're excited to do. Right.
And then from there, if you have them read something, watch a video. So now when you go to the world where it's not endless seas of prospects, then it is to that point. You give them a homework assignment. You ask them to do something. I know Patrick Bet-David, when he interviews his executive teams, they're reading a book before they meet with him for the interview. And if they don't read the book, they don't get the interview. So we've done that as well for internal hires. We haven't done it for VAs yet because we haven't found that we needed to, but for internal hires, like, the more steps you can have somebody take that reveal alignment and that reveal it to them and reveal it to you, I think the better.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we started doing when hiring executive assistants or virtual assistants is that we always have them do test projects that relate to what the role is. So if they're going to be posting content, we give them content to post. So what we started doing was we would get these test projects and we decided to give them feedback on it in the way that their hiring manager often gives feedback. So if it's like through comments on a Google Doc or through a video recording or through just a voice note. And we wanted to see, okay, if they can bring the feedback implemented to the interview so that we just could see, like, not only if they're open to the feedback or were reluctant to do it or not, but also how they were able to improve and how they work through or talk through the improvements on the interview. So you're right. I mean, like, at the beginning is, how can I craft this process so that it produces those signals for us to make a decision on? But I think that it just takes a lot of effort. Like, your way is a lot more automated because you could probably like set it and forget it. The way that we do it is a little bit more specialized, but at I think that a message for people listening would be just start implementing these activities within your process that will give you those signals for you to kind of see if that's something that they have within them or not.
Yeah, and I think sometimes the hesitation is, how can I expect people to do that? But there's also a philosophy or psychology that people value what they pay for. And so asking somebody to pay with their time, investing some bandwidth, investing some emotional, and some thought process, they're going to value the conversation, the opportunity, all that more. And if they don't, again, I don't want to work with somebody who's not willing to demonstrate their ability to be bought in or demonstrate their ability to be coachable. And I've yet to find somebody who would say no to in a category, like to something like that. That's not what I do. That's not how I roll. Who ends up being a good fit.
Right. I couldn't agree more, because people often ask us too, like, how are you getting these people to do all these test projects and things like that? Well, we did a good job in the front end of selling the value of what the role is. And so and it's the best filter, because you're right. Like, we often get 600 people apply, maybe 50 complete projects. And that's like, okay, we already know that those 550 weren't willing to put in that extra work and that commitment. More likely we would have one or two rock stars there that we never would have known. But if you're de-risking the hiring decision, you want to keep with the ones that already shown you that they've done the work.
The problem is you'll lose some rock stars in the 550 because for some reason or other, just couldn't get to it. But if you were to call all 550, if you were to force a conversation with all 550 and you get half of them on the phone, you're going to have a lot of them that are going to, out of just human nature, they're just going to go, they're going to make you think they're better and more capable than what they are, but they already showed you who they are. They already showed you that they're not somebody who follows through. They already showed you that they're not that open-minded to a new process. They already showed you that they're not willing to over-invest in something that isn't certain. And those aren't the people that you want on your team. So although you lose a few of the good ones, it safeguards you from over-indexing wasted time on all of the bad ones.
Now, I think that we've talked about, or you mentioned it a little bit earlier, two moments during the initiation process of bringing somebody on board to your team, and that is onboarding and integration. For those who are maybe confused about these two terms, can you go over like what each of them mean? And also, if I am starting again to structure this for what it might look like for my business, what are some of the elements that need to be true for an onboarding process and an integration process?
So the distinction between those two for me is that onboarding is the more technical and, let's call it, legal process of becoming part of the company. Signing your documents, getting your logins, getting your email, getting access to the learning management system, whatever you have, maybe brief introductions to the necessary people. Integration. So onboarding is the system and it's the company. Integration is the people and it's the team. Integration is where you can connect to and begin building relationship with the people on the team. If there's ongoing training that is live or in person, that's a part of integration. It might be a crossover, but integration is deepening relationships and building trust with people and teams. Onboarding is simply getting in the system and having a baseline level of confidence that the company exists, right? Like, oh, this is real. You got a website, you got an email. Okay, yeah, it's not just all made up. Okay. But if you're going to really win their heart and build a long-term relationship, you got to start bridging that trust gap right away. Because when they start working with you, unless it's a close friend or unless it's somebody you know for a long time, there's a big trust gap. I can tell you in direct sales, when somebody says yes to a job that scares them, I'm sure there's plenty of other industries that are similar, right? They say yes to the job that scares them. Immediately, they realize there's a huge gap. Like, yes makes sense, but only if I'm with the right team, and only if I'm selling a product that people actually want, and only if I'm using a process that actually works, and only if I'm working with leaders that actually care and are good at developing me. And I don't know any of that for sure yet. I think I do, but I don't know it for sure. So there's this huge gap, and integration helps to close the gap. Integration helps to demonstrate that you've got their back, that you are a leader who can help develop them, that the team is a team worth being around, that the systems are systems worth learning. And the closer they get to believing that, the smaller that trust gap, and the easier it is to go and be all in that job, in that business.
I really like that because talking about like onboarding first, I think that you mentioned it like I have to feel like it's almost like, what's it called? Like buyer's remorse. Like as soon as
Hmm.
you buy something, you start feeling like,
Yes.
oh, did I do the right job? Is this
Yeah.
company shady going to steal my money? It's the same thing like when you apply and the first day of the job comes around and you have not received an email. You don't know
There you
where to
go.
go, where to log
Yeah.
in, like what's the deal? So I think that for onboarding, for people who are building this, they should have like a checklist or a list of steps that makes it feel to them that everything is buttoned up. We have a process for how people's first week looks like from like a credential standpoint.
Good.
So I think that that starts buying trust with your
Hmm.
new recruit and be like, oh, I'm in a professional organization.
Yes.
But on the integration side, I think it extends to the analogy that you were saying about dating, right? Because I
Mhm.
think that most people, when they hire, they might have that belief that, oh, we're still dating and they still have to show up the first day, the first week, the first month, they still have to show up. But that is also true for the employer. You have to like continue to be on the re-recruiting
Mhm.
stands
Yeah.
because the first weeks are tough, the first month is tough, so you got to continue to sell on the vision, on the what's in it for me. Um,
Mm.
because I think that statistically 65% of churn happens within the first 90 days. So that integration and buy-in is so
Mhm.
important for you to like reduce attrition as much as possible. And
You-
on the flip side, even be a launch pad for them to be successful in your role.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So I want to talk a little bit more about the training handoff, right? So like a lot of people are like, oh, I got a rock star in our ranks, right? Like we're gonna be good, we're gonna get all these like benefits from hiring good people. But we both know that the work isn't done when you bring the right person on the bus. So what do you think about like the importance of hiring or training once you brought the right person? And when these are separate teams, how do you ensure that there is a good communication between both of these functions within your organization?
Are you talking about onboarding and integration?
I'm talking about recruiting and then like the training part of it
Mm.
or like the
Mm.
handoff. Because in some
Yeah.
cases, the person who recruited the person is not the hiring manager or is not the trainer. So in this relay race of a handoff, sometimes there's the baton that gets dropped. So how do we ensure like a good communication between the functions in your business that are doing the recruiting and then the training side?
Mm. Yeah. So the answer is, I think, systems, unless you're going to rely on people, which is not a good idea because people are people, right? So you can scale systems, you can refine systems, you can't refine people, and you can't scale people. That's not how humans work. So
Yeah.
in our process right now, and we do this for dozens and dozens of companies, is the training is built into the recruiting cycle, and that entire recruiting cycle, like we mentioned earlier, extends not just to when they get hired, but to when they've been in the field and they're knocking on doors and in our business, and they're not quitting, right? So it's like they're not recruited until they decide not to quit, at least after the first week or two. You still do lose a lot of people after that, but that's when recruiting stops. The second half of that recruiting, from onboarding to integration, uh, we recommend launching people into the sales role with like a sales school or some event, a multi-day event. We host that for our partners, but we recommend everybody does that. And even a normal employee, like having a special experience the first day that really kind of creates that demarcation line where, hey, things are going to move in a different direction now, and let's make some element of today special so that you understand this is significant. Even if we're dating, you know, my philosophy was never date somebody that I didn't think I could marry. Same concept, right? You don't say yes to the person if you know they're wrong, but if you think they're the right one, you say yes and then treat them like they're the right one unless proven otherwise. Back to the question is, the handoff is scripted ahead of time. And so
Yeah.
the hiring manager or the recruiter who makes the decision and gets them to the manager who says, yes, you're on the team. Part of the onboarding is getting them the training. And then part of integration, which is pre-created, is the managers beginning to build that relationship and do the training with them. So that's actually built into the integration. if you're not, it's actually one of the best ways to integrate, because when you're investing into people before they start or in the beginning of their time with you, you're looking for a handful of things, right? You're looking to challenge them. So that means continue to give them things to do to become better and more prepared to succeed at the job. You're going to coach them. So if you challenge them with something, then you got to follow it up and coach them once they deliver it. Contribute to them, which contributing could be here's a podcast, that I thought of you here, watch this. Here's a book. Have you read this book? Maybe it's doing some coaching as a form of contribution, challenging as a form of contribution. You want to contribute. And then convict, right? You want to convict them that they've made the right decision, they're in the right place, that they've got what it takes to win. And training allows you to kind of do all four of those things at the same time. And so, those C's, those 4 C's are important in that initial phase. And recognizing, regardless of how much talent or experience somebody comes in with, they don't have experience working at your company. They don't have experience working with or for you. And so there has to be an awareness that training them, retraining them, training them on your system, your company, your process is not something that you shouldn't take for granted that's going to happen. You got to design it.
One of the things that I'm curious about, because before I think that you used to recruit and train for your organizations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like whether that was solar or home security systems or whatever it was. Now your business is in a position where it's a lot more dynamic, because of all these other different organizations that you kind of have to help during these stages of integrating people. One of the things that we see often is that business owners don't have a robust training program. They don't have anything lined up. It's almost like tribal knowledge, or like, hey, they used to call, like, the famous quote is like the baptism of fire. We'll just throw them out and then they'll kind of like figure out on the job. I don't think that's the best approach, but when I confront that sort of like methodology, a lot of the feedback that we get is like, well, we just don't have enough time to design a training. How can they think about this in a different way?
I don't think I can give you all of the answer you're looking for, but I can give you a couple pieces. Number one is, if you're hiring for a position over and over again, I think it's a different conversation, right? If you're hiring for a position over and over again, training for that position should be more obvious of a priority than if you're just every year hiring for one office role, and that office role is changing as your company evolves, right? Like I recognize it's difficult to create an entire manual and a system for a singular role filled by a singular person at a specific point in time, and it might not be refilled by anybody else for a long time. You don't have an SOP because you've been doing it while you've been doing 6 other businesses, like 6 other roles. So like, that being said, you still want to take the time to design as much as you can the intention of that role, the outcomes of that role, and any relevant training. So we've done that. But I can speak more intelligently to the other part, which is the role that you recruited for again and again and again, whatever business you're in, whatever that is, you've got to have training, because if you're doing a lot of it, you understand what you're looking for and you know what it takes for people to be successful. And yet we deal with companies, we work with partners that don't have training systems. They don't have learning management systems, or what's called an LMS with pre-recorded video. And like the ability to multiply your time by recording something. This podcast, however many people view it, it's only going to take us about an hour to film it, right? So it takes us 1 hour and it will be viewed by however many people it is, hundreds of hours of content, of information gathering from a single 5, 10, 15 minute video shot for training is what happens at scale over time. And so I would just say, if your fear is that you're going to do it wrong, not doing it all is the most wrong version you can do. Right. You can take your iPhone out and just shoot. You can use Loom on your computer. We do a lot of Loom training for our VAs, and it's like you just Loom it and you talk out loud while you do the thing. You don't have to design the perfect SOP. A good VA or a good team member can actually take your Loom and turn it into an SOP. There's some AI software out there that can kind of do it for you. It's getting better. It's not that good right now, but I don't know if that answers the question, but we do training for our partners. It's that important. But although we represent a lot of different products being sold in the doors, knocking on doors is a really specific business model. And
Yeah.
so if you're hiring somebody for a role, that's a very specific role, and there's industry training available, that's an option. Go find the best in class industry training and pay for it. Leverage it. Our partners do that with us all the time. We train 30, 40, 50 people a week. Soon it'll be 100 a week in the core fundamentals of door-to-door, because you need to have that training to have a shot at success when you get the field. Not all
Yeah.
jobs are that like hot and cold in the first few days, but direct sales are.
I used to be in the learning and development background. And one of the things, it was like a creation or a curation approach, where do we need to create the training from scratch, or can we just curate it for somebody else? So to your point, like if it's industry training, I could just go and curate it from somebody. That is better than not having anything at all. And the things that we are creating, kind of like what you're saying, is created in a way that has good leverage, which a video has a great leverage because you can replay it over and over again, or a recording of me doing live training once, and then that gets recorded to give to the next person who comes in. So I really like the fact of like doing it in a bad way is better than, or not a bad way, but doing it like with the minimal effort is way better than not doing it at all. And you can continue to iterate from that. Which is what I think we can extrapolate, regardless of whether it is a door-to-door or if it's like in another context. You can still take a curation or a creation approach, and you can still do what you can with what you have at the moment in time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that one of the last things that I want to talk about, and then we probably could do like a quick lightning round, is one of the things that I enjoyed when I was part of the door-to-door world was the fact that training didn't stop at the beginning integration part. It was an every single day thing. We had these things called correlation meetings.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people think that, oh, we've gone through like the learning curve, 30, 60, 90 days. And then that's the last time that I've ever received training in an organization, right? Whereas in that sort of culture was everyday sort of thing. And I think that more organizations should think about it that way. Are you still doing that, by the way? Do you still see value in doing this beyond like the direct sell model? And whenever you were putting those together, for me, it felt like it was intentional, it was organized, it was like there was a purpose to each session. How did you structure those out so that they had the maximum effect?
Yeah. So for the direct sales world, I can say that, repetition and frequency and proximity of those meetings is all intentional and all super important, because you are in this constant, it's like if you're playing a team sport, there's a reason that teams get together before they go off and do their thing, right? There's just value in the camaraderie and the togetherness. And I think there's also value in giving people new skills and new concepts that logically help them to believe that today will be better than yesterday. And so in door-to-door specifically, or any industry where there's a high failure rate, maybe a high churn rate, having a more consistent 15 to 45-minute training on a daily basis, I've seen go a long way. And again, sometimes it's the actual strategy you're giving them. Sometimes it's just we call it the feather in the cap, right? The magical feather in the cap, the belief that you got something of value, which helps today to seem more exciting and more achievable, right? More doable. Transitioning that out of the direct sales space. So all of our direct sales partners, they're doing training multiple times a week, if not once a day. So once a day, I would say, is the best practice, but even 3 times a week, we still see people that do that with a lot of success. In a non-direct sales role, I don't think it's as common. I think it's not as common because it probably doesn't provide the lift, the same type of lift, but learning together is still very important. And so we do that. Like, we've got our team meeting on Mondays. We're getting together, we're reviewing KPIs, and we're also talking about like the focus, the priorities, and any learning opportunities along the way. We've done book of the month clubs in the past, where we had the entire executive team reading a book and we were discussing it a couple of times a month. So one of the important things that I think happens in an organization is that whether you're the CEO or the janitor sweeping the floors, nobody is beyond the point in life where they are learning. And in that regard, we're all on a learning journey together. And this is the culture that I am focusing on creating in our company right now, is that sorry, is that we are all on a shared learning journey. We might be learning different things. We might be in different phases of our learning, but we are all learning. And if everybody recognizes that they're learning in their role and as a team you're learning, then making mistakes is not such a big problem. And there's space and openness and safety to bring it up. And there's space and openness and safety to offer opinions or suggestions, because none of us believe that we're simply doing everything perfect. You look at a guy like Elon Musk, and I'd say Elon is, clearly a guy who's on a learning journey. There's a famous story about, him. I forget the guy who approached him, but it was something like a college student or a high school student offered a suggestion. If you remember the story, like basically said, "Hey, have you thought about doing this with the manufacturing of the spaceship or the whatever those things are called?" And Elon thinks about it. He's like, "I think we will." Like, he's not even above the opinion of somebody who's got
Yeah, that's
way
not a
less
bad
experience.
idea. I think that's what
Yeah,
he
he's
said,
like,
right?
"That's
Like,
not a bad idea.
actually,
Let's check it out."
yeah.
And then it worked. So, creating, not having the air of superiority and recognizing everybody's learning and acknowledging that and celebrating it is something that we aim to do. And in direct sales, I would say that's the nature of the game. And in our company now, we're looking to create that type of harmony. And harmony is the wrong word. That type of synergy that happens as a byproduct of people recognizing, look, we are all here to learn and progress as a team together, and let's make sure we maintain that focus.
I really like that, because to your point, the cadence is determined by the context of the role. So if it's like a full contact sales role, like, do it more consistently. Like, that's why there's more practice than actual games. But if you want a culture with a growth mindset, with, this sort of like personal development, or people who are out there to achieve, then yes, have these moments where you're learning together and have them be rooted on KPIs and what matters to the business, right? Like you mentioned, like we start by KPI analysis, and then, oh, there's a deficit here. Let's supplement this deficit with training. So I think that was the last question. I don't know if you have a little bit of time to do a lightning round. If not, we could just close it out. Up to you.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Yeah, you can do them quick.
Really quickly. What is one task that after you delegated, you never gonna take back?
Okay. What's one task that once I delegated it, I would never take it back? Man, there's been a handful. Yeah, there's a lot of things. I'm getting a little legalistic on this, because there's almost nothing that I don't still dive back into every now and then. So that, like, but I'll say the one that strikes me is when I delegated our automations and kind of the back end systems to my brother, our partner, and now he's doing that for others on his team. Like, it was very clearly in his zone of genius, and it was in my zone of competence, but not genius. And so once I saw him do it with excellence, I'm like, yeah, I don't need to touch that ever again.
Gotcha. What's the one habit that gives you the most leverage in your day to day?
Going to bed on time.
Like it.
Everything's downstream of that. If you go to bed on time, you wake up on time. If you wake up on time, everything else happens.
Awesome. What's a book or resource that has impacted you the most in the way that you lead?
I think for the season that I'm in right now, yeah, there's so many. I'll just use a business book because of what we're talking about today, which is Traction by Gino Wickman, the EOS model.
Okay, awesome. And lastly, the first one that comes to mind, right? If you could leave any founder or every founder who's listening one rule for scaling smarter, what would that be?
Build systems, but don't overbuild systems.
Awesome. Cool. So that is it for us today. Peter, where can people find you, and what sort of people are you trying to attract into your world? If they're listening and they happen to want to interact with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah. So I'm, you can find me on Instagram at PV Swenson. You can also find us on LinkedIn and Instagram as V Hire Advantage, HIRE. So V Hire Advantage. And in terms of business, we work with home service businesses, any business that does high volume recruiting. We can help you to do it better, likely. Anybody else that wants to connect, I love connecting and adding value where I can.
Awesome. And we'll include all this in the show notes. So Peter, thank you so much for spending this time with us. Hope to see you soon, and then we'll catch you on the next time.
Okay. Cheers.
So there you have it. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode, and also for tuning into our first ever guest appearance on the show. We hope you were able to learn a lot from Peter. We're going to be adding the resources and frameworks that we talked about in the show notes, as well as Peter's LinkedIn, so that you can follow him and continue to learn from him. If you like this kind of content, we're going to try to publish one episode a week around the subjects of recruiting, training, managing, growing, and building high-performing teams so that you can build a business that actually scales. So if you want to learn more about these subjects, please be sure to follow us and enjoy the rest of the other episodes.